Anything that exists is possible. No matter how odd, how unbelievable, how bizarre, if it exists, it's possible. Kenneth Boulding said that, and that's true. And that's the importance of Bhutan. For people who care about the human relationship with the natural world, Bhutan is an inspiration, a place where the very landscape is regarded as sacred, and development has more to do with the spirit than the stock market. This is Tak Chang Gomba, known in English as the Tiger's Nest. In the 8th century, a great saint named Guru Rinpoche flew on the back of a tiger to a cave on this cliff face at the beginning of his mission to bring Buddhism to Bhutan. The monastery built on the site is said to be held to the cliff by the hairs of angels. And this is the view from the Tiger's Nest. That's the Paro Valley, showing the compact little fields of Bhutanese farms. And that's a stray dog that walked up to the monastery with us just for companionship. Dogs are said to be the last incarnation prior to a human one, and they wander freely in Bhutan. Nestled in the eastern Himalayas, between India and Tibet, directly north of Bangladesh, Bhutan is about 2/3 the size of Nova Scotia, both in population and in area. Bhutan is spectacularly beautiful, encompassing lush valleys, dense virgin forests, subtropical plains, and magnificent peaks, many of which are unclimbed. The frosty peaks on the far horizon in that slide mark the Tibetan border. Culturally and socially, says one visitor, Bhutan is an upside-down place. Here the number 13 is considered lucky, children greet you with bye-bye, and the king wants to abolish himself. He did, too. The city of Thimphu is the only capital city in the world without a single traffic light. Here marijuana is fed to the pigs, it gives them the munchies, and they fatten. The national sport is archery. Tobacco sales, billboards, and plastic bags are prohibited, but polygamy and polyandry are quite acceptable. The fourth king, still living but no longer on the throne, has 4 wives. They're all sisters. Bhutan has more monks than soldiers. Most of its liquor, including Red Panda beer and Dragon rum, is produced by the army. You can mail a letter using a postage stamp bearing your own photo. And the most popular good luck charm is a mural or a carving of a penis, erect. The Bhutanese have also turned economics upside down. The gross national product, said the fourth king, the one who abolished himself, is not as important as the gross national happiness. The Bhutanese are absolutely serious about pursuing gross national happiness as opposed to gross national product. After all, what is the purpose of the economy if not to produce happiness? Something's going right. In 2006, Bhutan was rated by Business Week magazine as the happiest country in Asia. Bhutan is striving for a unique marriage of its ancient culture with a sustainable post-industrial future. Until the 1960s, the country was literally feudal, an absolute monarchy without schools, hospitals, or highways. This is the Dzong at Trong Sa, a combination of monastery, fortress, and administrative center. Until the 1960s, all of Bhutan's east-west trade went through this building. The main east-west highway is still pretty scary. Those are wandering yaks. In the 1960s, Bhutan had no telephones, no postal service, and no national currency. It was the last country in the world to get television in 1999. 50 years ago, the lives of the Bhutanese were probably very much like the lives of pre-industrial peoples anywhere. People lived in farmhouses like this one. Life was very local, mainly agricultural, focused on village and family, deeply religious with a powerful connection to the countryside. This woman is holding prayer beads, a Buddhist counterpart to the Catholic rosary. This traditional religious culture is visibly the bedrock of Bhutanese life. Prayer flags are everywhere, sending prayers to heaven every time they flap. Prayer wheels like these send prayers whenever they spin, and chortens or shrines dot the countryside. Bhutan has been governed for the past century by a dynasty of 5 kings who seem to have ruled with remarkable fairness and wisdom and with a powerful dedication to their people. They are venerated in Bhutan. Their pictures are everywhere. This picture hangs in the country's only airport. Here's a story that helps explain that devotion. In 2003, the fourth king faced a terrible dilemma. A group of Assamese separatists was raiding India from a base in southern Bhutan, and India was pressing the Bhutanese to get them out. The possibility was that if Bhutan did not put them out, the Indian army might come in and do so with disastrous possibilities for Bhutan's independence. So the king went to visit the Assamese, spoke individually to each soldier, gave each one an apple, and asked them to leave. They refused. So the king added several hundred volunteers to his 9,000-man army, his untested 9,000-man army. He knew what he was up against because he'd counted the apples. And he led them personally into battle. His army prevailed with the loss of about 10 Bhutanese and numerous Assamese. But far from being jubilant, the king was so appalled at the loss of life that he forbade any victory celebration. Instead, he caused 108 chortens, or shrines, to be erected at the high pass of Dochu La to honor the dead on both sides and to speed them on their way to their next life. What extraordinary spiritual maturity. I know of no other war memorial anywhere that mourns the battle and grieves all of the dead. And this is the same king, the fourth king, who declared nearly 40 years ago that gross national happiness is more important than gross national product, bravely setting his tiny nation on a unique path to development. In 2006, over the protests of his people, the fourth king abdicated in favor of his 27-year-old son. In 2008, under the fifth king, ancient Bhutan became the world's youngest democracy, a constitutional monarchy with its commitment to gross national happiness intact. What do we mean by gross national happiness? Is it possible to measure genuine progress towards a more human, dignified, and compassionate future? Seeking answers to that question, the Bhutanese government sought out the little research group known as GPI Atlantic, which had spent a decade developing a genuine progress index for Nova Scotia. The head of GPI is Dr. Ron Coleman, and he set out to adapt the Nova Scotia work to the very different world of Bhutan. GNH rests on 4 pillars of value that almost everyone accepts. The first pillar is environmental conservation, caring for nature and others. Second is cultural promotion, preserving the wisdom of an ancient and cherished culture. Third is sustainable and equitable development that benefits all citizens, past and future, as well as present. Fourth is good governance, the inculcation of active and responsible citizenship. These 4 pillars are divided into 9 domains, containing 72 measurable variables. One variable is a commitment to maintain forest cover over at least 60% of the country forever. In fact, 72% of Bhutan is forested, 52% is permanently protected, and Bhutan presently absorbs 3 times as much carbon as it emits. It's not really difficult to measure stuff like that. You can also measure various aspects of education, political participation, and health. The country now has universal health care and universal free education. The measurements show that between 1984 and 1994, life expectancy rose from 48 to 66 years, while infant mortality was cut in half. Notice that GNH doesn't just count money. It counts lives. That's genuine progress, and it's a very good indicator of a nation's happiness. Bhutan's first elected prime minister is the Honorable Jigme Yoser Thinley, whose government is utterly committed to maximizing gross national happiness. Realizing that gross national happiness had to be bred right into the young people, his government asked Ron Coleman to assemble the world's leading holistic educators for a workshop on education for gross national happiness. I went along as an observer. At the workshop, held in December 2009, innovative educators from 16 countries discussed education for sustainability, cultural richness, equity, ecology, and citizenship. The participants began by asking, what kind of citizen does Bhutan want? The answer, citizens who see clearly the interconnected nature of reality and understand the full benefits and costs of their actions and care deeply for others and the natural world. How would you shape such citizens? The workshop called for an education dedicated to deep critical and creative thinking, ecological literacy, practice of the country's profound ancient wisdom and culture, a holistic understanding of the world, genuine care for nature and for others, competency to deal effectively with the modern world, preparation for right livelihood, and informed civic engagement. The Bhutanese government accepted those principles instantly, overnight. This is the Deputy Minister of Education announcing next morning that this was now government policy. The government committed itself to retraining everyone in the educational system, starting just 10 days later with the officials in the Department of Education. All the school principals in the country would begin training a month later, and curriculum development would begin immediately. Within 3 years, every teacher in Bhutan would have received GNH training. The process has proceeded pretty much on that schedule. Gross national happiness values are intended to shape every part of the nation's life, including agriculture. This is farmland in the Paro Valley, one of the few flat, easily cultivated parts of Bhutan. Last August, the Prime Minister announced that his government intends to make Bhutan the first nation in the world to be fully 100% organic in its food production. Bhutan's lead food policy consultant will be none other than the celebrated agricultural activist Vandana Shiva, who I had the pleasure of interviewing in Bhutan. The Organic Gardening Initiative is all part of the strategy of rooting every aspect of Bhutan's development in GNH values. Going organic, says the Prime Minister, is living GNH. Organic growing even fits the Bhutanese terrain with its tiny farms. There is a farm in this photo. Can you see it? There's the farm, way up on the hillside, outlined in red, nestled among the trees. This mural on our hotel wall illustrates the beloved Bhutanese folk tale of the four friends who combined their efforts to obtain a continuous supply of fruit. The peacock finds a seed and plants it. The rabbit waters it. The monkey fertilizes it. The elephant guards it. And when it grows and bears fruit, the four friends make a tower to reach up and harvest it. This prayer, along with a portrait of the Buddha, was painted on the rock beside the main highway during the filming of Travelers and Musicians, Bhutan's first feature film. Here you have ancient and modern in one text. It says, "May all sentient beings be free from wanting to be praised, not wanting to be criticized, wanting to be happy, not wanting to be unhappy, wanting to gain, not wanting to lose, wanting to be famous, not wanting to be unknown." Thus prayed at the occasion of filming in Bhutan, November 2002, Scene 112, Take 101. Bhutan's approach to the modern world comes just as the industrialized nations are having deep second thoughts about what was once known simply as progress. Now we know that progress has also meant losses as well as gains. We know that the natural world is in trouble, and we know that although we are the wealthiest people who ever lived, we are by no means the happiest. If Bhutan's educational innovations really worked, if a curriculum infused with GNH values really had the desired effect, what would the result be in 5 or 10 years? I asked the Prime Minister, and here's what he said he would like graduating students to understand.
That success in life does not mean acquisition of wealth. That success in life is a state of being when one can come home at the end of the day satisfied with what one has done, being able to put your head on your pillow and have a sound sleep and dream, perhaps, or wake up the next day realizing that you are a happy individual, not only because you have found happiness for yourself, but because you have given happiness in the process, in the process of this one day's work that you have done, happiness to your spouse, to your children, to your family, to your neighbors, and to the world at large.
Bhutan is not Shangri-La, though it sometimes feels that way. The Bhutanese are not saints, and some are far from enthusiastic about the objectives of GNH. The country has complex problems of its own, some of them deep-rooted and intractable. Yet although some of its problems are uniquely Bhutanese, others apply to every nation on the planet, and indeed to every person. And here Bhutan leads the way. How do we live mindfully and sustainably and indeed reverently on this fierce and beautiful planet? Dream big. Evolution is not finished. James Lovelock is the British scientist who articulated the Gaia theory, the idea that the whole Earth behaves as a single living organism. Our intelligence, if it could be integrated as part of the whole planetary system, would make our planet the first intelligent planet in the galaxy, perhaps. That would be a wonderful future for humans. Anything that exists is possible. Prime ministers like that do exist, so it's possible to have one. A development policy centered on respect for the environment does exist, so that's not impossible either. There is a government that regards the intellectual, social, and spiritual development of its people as its primary objective, rather than the pillaging of the earth. So that's possible too. I hear the lesson for us in the voice of the great Mi'kmaq fiddler Lee Cremo. One time when he was a boy, Lee and his father were listening to one of Cape Breton's great fiddlers, and Lee turned to his father and said, "You think I could learn to play like that?" "Well," said Simon, "you got 2 hands, 10 fingers, same as him. So if he can do it, why can't you do it?" Using tools developed in Nova Scotia, the Bhutanese propose to be grossly happy. If they can do it, why can't we do it too?